So rather than just talk about this to death, let me use the example that we use throughout the lectures. And this is just a team that actually did this in 5 days, not 3 weeks. There was a team at Columbia University called JerseySquare, and they were a rental service for professional sports jerseys. And in 5 days, they did 169 interviews and had 190 people show up at their website, and they actually sold 2 of their products. 5 days from a raw idea into a business. So on day 1, these were their initial hypotheses coming into the class. They thought that their customer segments was going to be professional sports game attendees. That is, they were beginning with a series of hypotheses about their customer archetype. And they thought their value proposition was going to provide a cheaper way to officially license sports jerseys to a game, eliminate the risk of owning a player whose jersey is traded, and to provide alternatives to purchasing counterfeit jerseys. And their sales channel was going to be websites or stadium shops or ticket websites or direct mail. And how they were going to create demand was through search ads, social media, stadium promotions. And their revenue stream was going to be through an annual subscription model. So when we took a look at this day 1 canvas, the teaching team, first said, we don't even believe that there's a market here. What's the total available market? Is this like a hobby or a business? And how do you know? And did you do any real customer discovery? And our skepticism really, in fact, infuriated these guys who they thought they were domain experts because they were wearing a lot of jerseys. And teaching team, this is your job. You want to irritate them into action. We did this on purpose, not by accident. We wanted these people to come back on the first day with enormous proof that this was even worth spending their time. And they did it. They went out to Yankee Stadium in New York and found the most people in the densest area they could who actually were potential customers. And they spoke to 60 some odd customers just to prove to us what idiots the teaching team was by design. They didn't understand that that was part of our game, is to get them to raise theirs. And when they came back again, they showed us, hey, look, there might be a real business here, and it's even bigger than we thought because it includes females. And so one of the things we pointed out to them is it looked like they had multiple customer segments. And this just is a teaching team tactic, but when you have multiple customer segments, you have to have multiple value props, and you probably have multiple revenue models, if not multiple other things. Just for logistics, just for you to be able to teach, we beat them up that said you need to put these in multiple colors because it will force you to actually start thinking about how each segment relates to each other. And so they got out of the building and, again, talked to different users or potential users in different locations. And now you could see they actually took our advice and segmented the canvas in 2 separate colors because they thought there were 2 unique customer segments. And now you could see the customer segment sport jersey owners match the value prop for sports jersey owners and match the revenue model, and it's fairly easy to track their thinking. Now, the thinking by now in this 3rd iteration is a big idea for facilitators and coaches. It's no longer their opinion. They now have 100+ customers telling them this, and life is getting kind of interesting because they now know more collectively than you do. It's actually no longer your opinion versus theirs, which it was on day 1. It's actually, they're now bringing you data. Now, it can be that they're just misinterpreting the data, or they might be calling on the wrong people in the wrong places. That's your job as the facilitator and coach, is to say, well, wait a minute, that's the wrong segment, or gee, have you looked at your activities or your resources, because you might have a great theory on the right-hand side, but this thing won't pencil out if you just do the numbers. And so we pushed them a bit on day 3, and they actually went out and started looking at the left-hand side of the canvas because we beat the stuffing out of them, saying, yeah, this might be nice, but there's no way, you're going to end up spending more doing this than you could bring in. And so they went out and actually talked to the left side of the canvas, and they actually found out that, oh yeah, you were right, it's not FedEx we want to use because that's too expensive. But we also found out how much we could actually charge. We had people raise their hand and say we could do that. And the other thing we push is that by the 2nd or 3rd day or 2nd or 3rd week, we want them to have launched their website or have their app up and running. And these guys did exactly that. Literally in the third day, they had a working website, and within 9 hours, they had 81 visitors, even though it was all their relatives and friends. It didn't matter. They now had traffic to a site. And they actually received an order from the first customer who wasn't even a relative, which was actually, again, another sign of a teaching team standing up and cheering. So we literally all stood up and applauded, and then we reminded them that the record inside of a class was a purchase order for $500,000. So they still had $499,000 to go, but it was a good start. And of course, it makes the other teams who are barely able to get, talking to customers, understand what the scale of the game is, that you really need to be playing this seriously here. And again, for facilitators and coaches, your goal is to keep the pressure on. You got to keep it on. Be polite, be respectful, but just remind them that the pressure you're putting on them is about 1/100th of what it's really going to be like in a real startup. And just understand, you're not trying to be mean, but part of your activity, if you remember, is to figure out how these teams operate in pressure. And it might just be that a good number of them aren't suited for this stage of the company. What a cheap way to find out. This is a simulation of a startup, and your job is to make sure they understand that this is just fractionally of the 24/7 sleepless nights that they're going to be spending for the next couple of years. So you could see after 5 days, just 5 days, after talking to 160 customers, you could see how the business model evolved dramatically from something that looked like this on day 1 to something that looked like this on day 5. Day 1, a series of untested hypotheses, a faith-based enterprise. On day 5, the faith has turned into facts. And this startup is on the road to actually building something that customers might want.